Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I am online now, waiting for people to join in. Aha, people are joining in. Great. We'll just give it another minute and then we'll start this Horizon 2020. The Horizon 2021 is a little bit shorter than some of the others because it's a complicated program, and I really sort of feel that I can only give you an overview because you then probably need to look at the detailed information. But I think what people probably most want about Horizon 2020 is some sort of broad overview. So that's what you're going to get. I hope that you're happy with that. While we are waiting, can I just briefly fill in a moment while we wait, just by mentioning to anybody who's not aware that Euclid is launching a new service called TickIt. TickIt is a ratings and review service for arts, culture, heritage, performances, museums, galleries, whatever. And we're piloting that from March onwards across the UK, but we're also hoping to pilot it in a few organisations outside the UK. If anybody is interested in hearing more about TickIt, then just please drop me an email. It costs nothing to participate, and it could provide you with some more feedback and some analytics about the audiences or visitors to your organisations. So if anybody is interested, just drop me a note and I will send you some more information about that. Okay, enough of the plug for what else we're up to. Right, I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people online now. So I'm expecting 1 or 2 more. So I think what I will do is I will start because the first few slides are common slides and we can get those out of the way fairly quickly. So providing everybody can see me and hear me, then I think we're good to go. Let me just find the presentation and then we can switch. Hang on 1 second. Okay, can't hear you. If the image is stuck, somebody has just said the image is stuck. If it is stuck for you, it may be a connection problem at your end. You may want to try and refresh your internet connection because it seems to be working okay at my end. My image is not stuck. If there is a real problem, do remember that we do record these webinars and they are available for a few days after the webinar is over. So hopefully you'll come back online, but if you don't come back online, then we can make that available. Solved, right, great, that's what we want to hear. Okay, we'll start the webinar. I will go to the slides and we'll kick off with it. Okay. This webinar, as I explained, is a summary of opportunities from Horizon 2020. How to interact? We all know this. We've all probably been to one of these, if not dozens of them before. Use the chat button to send questions. The chat button icon is in the top of your screen. Use that if you want to communicate with me. The treaty and the mission statement. The treaty doesn't really apply to Horizon 2020. It's not particularly focused on culture as opposed to anything else. So let's move on to Europe 2020. It is, however, deeply relevant to Europe 2020 agenda. Okay, the first of these themes here is strengthening research, technological development, and innovation, and followed by enhancing access to use and quality of information and communication technologies. So those 2 bullet points underpin what, certainly the first one in particular, what Horizon 2020 is trying to do. So Horizon 2020 has a strong link to Europe 2020 agenda. Horizon 2020 is one of the transnational funds, okay? Transnational funds have 15% of the budget, and I have to say the Horizon 2020 program has most of that. The Horizon 2020 program, you'll see, has a budget of just under 80 billion euros. It's huge compared to all the other transnational funds. So it's an enormous opportunity. On the other hand, this means it's enormously complex. Not necessarily complicated, but it's complex in the way in which it is structured. There are dozens of strands and sub-strands and ways in and so on and so forth. So hopefully, however, by the end of this, we will have helped you understand those parts of Horizon 20 that are most relevant to you. Okay. Characteristics of transnational grants, you've seen this slide before. Horizon 2020 is essentially project grants. Most of the projects involve partners, but there is one strand which does not involve partners. That is the strand for SMEs, small and medium enterprises. So there is one strand that doesn't involve partners, but most strands do involve partners. There are no individual mobility grants through Horizon 2020. It's all based on projects, and there is some element of match funding that's required for the project. So that's how it fits in. Okay. Now, before we go any further, I'm just going to absolutely double check to make sure that we're all still with me, that everybody is hearing me okay. Yes, we're all still. Nobody has sent me any other questions or points, panic modes about anything. So I will go back to the slides, if I can go back to the slides. Yeah. Okay. Horizon 2020 is the major funding opportunity for research and innovation. Okay, this is the R&D fund for Europe. It's the R&D fund for absolutely everything you can imagine in Europe. So it covers every possible sector, whether this is medical and biosciences, whether it's transport, whether it's engineering, whether it's construction, whatever it might be. This is it. That's why it has 79 billion worth of budget, supporting research, innovation, and business competitiveness. It is true that the European Union overall has a much lower investment in R&D than many other of the leading research countries in the world that are at the cutting edge of developments, such as obviously the United States, but also some Asian countries, and even I think I'm right about this, Australia and Canada. The EU research budget overall is low, so this is an attempt to try and improve it. That's not necessarily saying it's low in every member state, but overall the EU research budget is low. Okay, it's the successor to the 7th Framework Programme. Many of you will probably have heard of the various framework programmes which supported R&D in the past. This was going to be called the 8th Framework Programme, but they decided to give it a snappy new title. So Horizon 2020 brackets 8th Framework Programme carries on from an honourable tradition of investment in R&D. There's a bit of stuff there about implementing the Innovation Union. Apart from Europe 2020, there is also an Innovation Union strategy, which just goes on about the things I've just been saying, about how committed the European Union is to the developments and support of innovation. Part of Europe 2020, which I've already talked about. Okay. Strands, sub-strands, and actions. They say it is more streamlined, and I suppose in a way it is. I must admit, I think Horizon 2020 is a bit easier to understand than the 7th Framework. I think I understood the 7th Framework at the end of the day because I could see the sorts of examples of projects that they were supporting. I think it's clearer what Horizon 2020 is trying to do and the way it is structured. There are 3 strands, which are in sense science, industry, and society. Excellent science, 25 billion euro, industrial leadership, 17 billion, better society, 30 billion. The ones that are in red are the 2 that are most relevant to the creative and cultural sector. Now, I have to say, when I say most relevant, in some ways, I am stretching the definition. There is no way in the world that one could say that Horizon 2020 is deliberately aimed at arts, culture, heritage sectors. It is relevant to creative industries, because creative industries, in terms of the fact that they are, in theory, about innovation and creativity and so on, that's certainly part of Horizon 2020. But traditional arts and cultural organizations, it is not aimed at. However, many arts and cultural organizations are engaged in research activities of one form or another. I mean, obviously, museums and heritage sector is engaged in a lot of research work and preservation and all sorts of things which are relevant to this program. And other organizations, other arts organizations may be relevant as well. Okay, so industrial leadership and better society. The opportunities in industrial leadership are much more focused. You'll see the magic phrase at the end, communications technologies, ICT, information and communications technologies. That's the main theme there, relevant to the cultural sector. Better society, there's a broader range of potential opportunities there under better society, which we'll come to. In addition to those calls, there is also the SME instrument for small and medium enterprises. Those are organizations with 250 or fewer employees, which seems to me to cover the entire arts and culture sector, with the possible exception of the Royal Opera House and obviously some of the more commercial arts creative businesses. Right, I'll talk about the SME instrument towards the end, but this is the area where you don't need partners so much, and this is to support small, medium-sized businesses in their efforts to become more innovative and develop bright ideas and so on and so forth. Okay, ongoing program of funding calls, open for a limited period to competitively assess proposals. So the standard sort of thing. There's a announcement of call for proposals, then there is a deadline, you put your project together, it goes in, it's assessed by a jury, and the successful projects are then announced. As I've said, industrial leadership, better society, and perhaps the SME instrument are the areas most relevant to the cultural sector. Okay, so looking at the sub-strands here. Industrial leadership, it is ICT. That's the focus. What I have done here and on the next slide is list the specific calls for projects. So what happens under these strands, there are sub-strands, and under the sub-strands, there are then actions, calls for projects. So under industrial leadership, there is the ICT sub-strand, and then underneath ICT, there have been various 18, 19, 20, 21 calls for proposals. You'll see each of those has a date. The date indicates when the deadline was. So a couple of those have now passed, but I thought I would include them just to give you an idea of the sorts of areas that they're looking for. So there are two deadlines left in 2015, 19 and 20. 19 is technologies for creative industries, social media and convergence, and 20 is technologies for better human learning and teaching. And for each of these, there is a separate application process and guidelines and so on and so forth. Okay, and I'll come to all that in a moment. Under societal challenges, there is one main area, which is on the next slide, but there also seem to be potentially some other areas. Like, for example, in 2014, under the sub-strand of secure, clean and efficient energy, there was an entire call based on energy strategies and solutions for the deep renovation of historic buildings, which obviously has some relevance to the heritage sector and maybe to some museums as well. So this deadline was in 2014, so it's now passed. But we will keep our eyes open, and there may well be other opportunities such as those in the future. This is the main sub-strand under better societies. This is reflective societies, cultural heritage, and European identities. And you can see there's a whole raft of strands here, 11 altogether, some of which have deadlines in 2015. Number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 11. And you can have a look at these. I mean, I'm not going to read them all out. You'll see it's an interesting mixture of some projects which appear to be much more academically research-based, cultural opposition in the former socialist countries, the cultural heritage of war in contemporary Europe, and so on, and others which are much more practical, advanced 3D modeling for accessing and understanding European cultural assets, communication and dissemination platforms, and so on. So you'd obviously need to look at more detail at each of these, to all the ones that you think might be of interest, to find out whether this might be relevant to your particular circumstances. Okay, In each of the funding calls, they have 3 different types of actions: research innovation actions, and coordination and support actions. Research innovation are to do with establishing new and scientific and technical knowledge and exploring the feasibility of a particular product or process, service or solution. The innovation actions are a bit more practical. Plans, arrangements, designs for improved products, processes and services, and that's likely to include prototyping, testing, demonstrating, piloting, and so on and so forth. So research innovation is the research, innovation is the piloting. I mean, in a sense, in my view, that's a summary of the difference between those two. Coordination and support actions, the CSA, they're not about the research, but they're the coordination and networking of projects, programs, and policies. So helping set up networks that might work across. So if you happen to know that there are a series of cultural organizations, museums or heritage bodies or whatever it might be, doing research in a similar area, then you may be able to get a CSA to support the exchange of information and knowledge between this network of organizations across the European Union in the relevant area. Okay, I'm just going to, since all this is maybe a bit complicated to some people, I'm just going to go back and check to see whether there's any questions. No questions. Good. Before you have a chance to ask any questions, I'm now going to go back to the slides. I just do feel free at any point to send a chat message, and as I said, I will go back and check on the chats regularly. Okay, partners. Transnationality is a guiding principle, particularly in terms of wider benefits, lessons, and best practice. In other words, you need partners. The RIA and the IA, you need at least 3 legal entities. So it's standard stuff, transnational funds. For the RIAs and the IAs, you need 3 partners from 3 different member states or associated countries. We'll come to those in a moment. The CSA, there's no requirements, but as it's supposed to be a coordination and support action involving many people sharing good practice, then it seems to me that the bigger the better, in a sense. The more people you have involved in your CSA, the more information is going to be shared, and the greater the dissemination, and therefore the better the chances of project success. There are no requirements for partners from the SME instrument. Okay, so let's be clear about that. Right. The aim of all this involving partners, is to share learning across Europe and create added value. So you need to stress that in any application. You may show how cooperating with organizations from other countries can help you develop product or service that can be used and implemented in many regions across the program area. This is a way of making sure that the bright idea you have is not just going to be relevant to your particular region where you are based in England or Scotland or wherever, but it's actually also going to be relevant across Europe because you're involving partners from a range of different European countries. Or that partner organizations can learn from each other. And in any event, you need to show how all this is going to be widely shared across Europe, this dissemination process, which is something that is very important. And if you've been to any other webinars, you will have heard this from me many times before. Eligible countries, 28 member states. Associated countries, Norway and Iceland. Accession candidate countries, Albania, Bosnia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Turkey. Neighborhood countries, at the moment, I understand it's Israel and Moldova that have signed up, but there may be others. It is also possible to involve other third countries in other parts of the world in these projects, but not the big wealthy ones. In other words, this is not for partnerships with the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, whatever, other countries outside the European Union who might be classified as big wealthy ones. I'm not sure about places like Brazil, but you can check. There is a document there that you can download that will give you the update about the eligibility of certain third countries if you would like to get involved. Okay, finding partners, various mechanisms here. There are some organizations that provide a matching service. There's a website called Idealist, which you can look at. I find it a bit complicated, but it's certainly there. Horizon 2020 portal has a website and database there, but that's huge, absolutely vast, and I think you'll get lost amongst all the, this is a huge program. Everybody in Europe wants to be involved in getting access to this 80 billion euros. So it's a very large database. That's the website for it. National contact point in your particular area. For each of the sub-strands, there is a separate contact point. So although there's an overarching contact point in each country for Horizon 2020, there are lots of individual contact points because the program is so big. So there's a contact point for each of the individual strands, such as energy or reflective societies or ICT or whatever. They may be able to help. You can attend workshops run by the Directorate General responsible for this particular program if you can get yourself over to Brussels. There are, of course, your own networks, and many cultural organisations will probably find these through their own networks. If you're doing interesting research in any way, shape or form, you're probably involved or at least aware of other organisations in Europe who might be doing something similar. One workshop I went to, somebody said you are never more than 3 handshakes from anyone. I think that's a bit over-optimistic, but anyway, that was said, so maybe that's true. Finances. Okay, so let's cut to the chase. This is going to probably excite some people and scare others half to death. Small projects. You can get up to 4 million euros for small projects. Okay, so this is a very interesting definition of small. This is a lot of money that is available because they want to see it well invested in genuine innovation and interesting new ideas. Large projects can get up to 8 million euros. So small projects, 4 million, large projects, 8 million. You can get up to 100% of the direct costs and 25% of indirect costs. And I'll explain what all these are in a moment. Okay? Research projects get 100%, innovation projects get 70%. So in terms of the pure research, you get up to 100%. Innovation projects, you can get up to 70% because obviously this is putting things into practice. So it's expected that by that point you will have found some other partners to provide some of the resources. Non-profit organizations always get 100% of the rate, interestingly enough. Same rate for all types of activity, including management. 40% of the total grant is paid in advance. Now, even though your project may be getting, 4 million euros, the Commission only expects a half-day meeting per year as well as regular 6-monthly reports, or maybe quarterly reports in some cases. So, not a lot. It's not like they're spending their time looking over your shoulder and expecting daily updates, even though they're giving you vast amounts of money. Okay, so do bear that in mind. Eligible costs are actual costs, so they have to be real, incurred during the project between the appropriate start and end dates, determined according to usual accounting practices and principles, used solely to achieve the project, consistency with those principles, recorded in correctly kept accounts, exclusive of non-eligible costs, and at the end of the day, you will have to provide an independent audit certificate for the project budget. Okay, obviously best if you are getting one of these to open a separate bank account so it's easy to keep track of the particular amounts going through this particular project, and much easier for the accountants to sort of provide their audit certificate if everything is kept in a separate bank account to other bank accounts you may have for your organization's other activities. Application process. Okay. Application process, preparation usually takes about 2 months, they say. I think that's providing you have your partners in place. If you don't have your partners in place, then you need to build in the time required to gather your partners. The call will then be announced, and there'll then be a deadline, usually about 5 months later. You consolidate, you'll finalize your consortium, write your proposal, submit it, there'll be an evaluation, and then there'll be a decision. There'll then be a negotiation period, which will be what they call grant preparation, which could take up to 3 months while they discuss with you the details of the contract that you're going to sign. These are large amounts of money, and they're also to do with the potential research and innovation into new products, services, and so on and so forth. So the contracts could be a little complicated in terms of intellectual property, in terms of investment payback, all sorts of things like that. Do bear in mind that because these are quite large-scale applications, it could be expensive. You will need to put some money aside to travel to meetings of your partners, particularly if you're developing a large consortium. And, for a budget of 4 million or more, then a large consortium would probably be appropriate. So money will have to be invested in the preparation of these applications. Stage 1, find your partners. You need at least 3. We've talked about the partner search options before. There's another website there which gives you some summary of various partner search facilities that exist. Submit your proposal. Clear participant portal, participant identification code, that also applies. So, you can see now, if you've been to more than one of these webinars, that there is now a sort of standardization across the European Union about these application processes, including you need to register first to get your participant identification code, which is used as a reference in the applications and in any correspondence you have with the European Commission. Online only, no paper application. If you've been to other webinars, you will know that for the last few webinars I've been saying this about all the other application processes except the Culture Programme. Culture Programme is now virtually the only one that I'm aware of which requires you to print something out and post it off. Maybe that will change this year. Maybe this October they will abandon the printing and sending. This one, Horizon 2020, even though it's huge amounts of money you're applying for, it's an online only process. Written in template, editable Microsoft Word document. You can download this, fill it in offline. The budget has to be filled in online on the template provided, and the partner details must be filled in online as well, because what happens is when you enter your partner codes, your PIC codes, that has to be online so that all the details can be retrieved from the Commission's files and added into your application form for the other partners. Stage 3, evaluation by experts. Panels of independent specialists. Now, these no longer are gathered together in Brussels. It's all done independently. The application forms are sent off online to the various jury members all over Europe, and they simply assess them and then send them back with their comments and so on and so forth. There is a standard set of criteria against which all applications are assessed, and you'll be aware of these criteria when you start looking at the actual application forms in more detail, and I'll go through some of them later. Grant agreement. So there we are. We draw up the grant agreement, and as I was saying earlier, concerns what activities have been undertaken, duration, budget, rate, costs, contributions, rights, obligations, and so on and so forth. Normally takes about 3 months. Grant agreements normally stipulate that all partners are responsible. So you need to be very clear that you have clarified with your partners who's responsible for what and so on. Submitting a proposal. Application process is only open once the call is live. That's available from the topic page, so ICT 19 or Reflective 3 or whatever it might be. There are links given at the end here. There are 3 tabs on each of these pages. A topic description, which provides information on the call, topic conditions and documents, detail on submission information, and the submission service. So when the call is live, you can then press the button to start the submission. Okay. Commission tells us to use Internet Explorer. There are some problems using the Chrome browser, which has restricted access to the budget submission areas. It's a bit of a shame. There you are. There's the user manual download there that shows you how to register yourself, get your PIC number and so on, and then we can move on from this. It's all fairly straightforward. I've talked about PIC numbers. Register your proposal, which you then go back to, you edit it. There's information about how you can add a partner. It's all fairly straightforward, uploading a proposal, entering the budget, and so on. So what's in a proposal? General information, all the contact details, summary of the activity, declarations, and so on. Detail who's involved and their contact details. The budgets. Do bear in mind that budgets are evaluated heavily on value for money, and you can't adjust your budget once you have submitted your proposal. That's it. There will also be, because of the nature of R&D, some questions about ethics surrounding your proposed activities, and then there will be questions that are specific to the particular call under which you are applying. You can download all the templates. It's all perfectly straightforward. Each area of funding has a proposal form relevant to the subcategory, so just reinforcing the point that everything is done individually. If you want to look at some sample forms, for RIA and the research innovation and the innovation actions, you can see sample application forms from that website. For CSA, you can see them from that website. For public procurement of innovative solutions, which is something that I don't think is actually relevant to most cultural organizations, you can also have a look at that particular website there. Budget Online, you click on Edit Forms, it will take you to the entry section, reimbursement of eligible costs. We talked about the 100% and the 70%. Reimbursements tend to be mainly for staff costs. Obviously you want to put a lot of staff time into developing, into undertaking the research and the development for this particular bright idea that you've got, so largely for personnel costs. You don't require timesheets if the individual members of staff are working full-time on the project, but if they're working part-time, then timesheets will be required, so that's something to bear in mind. Information about the partners as well. This does take a bit of time to fill all this in completely, perhaps more time than you think, but it should be relatively straightforward. Okay, so let's look at some of the individual calls then that I sort of talked about earlier. So technologies, this is number 19. These are the ones that have deadlines this year. Technologies for creative industries, social media, and convergence. Demand is growing for high quality content and new user experiences. There's all sorts of, however, new technologies, which means you can use technology almost anywhere. So developments related to content creation, access, and so on and so forth offer challenges for the creative and media industries in particular. So they're looking at innovative new ways of creating and accessing content. So this is an opportunity to establish new forms of content and user engagement, which could be transformative to many businesses in the creative and media industries. Okay, so that's what this particular call is all about. Closing date 14th of April. You can get an RIA for this, or an IA, or a CSA. So all three strands of actions are available under this particular call. So under this particular call, you can apply to do some research, you can test some new technologies, or you could sort of develop a policy exchange or a networking opportunity-based project to share information and good practice and so on with colleagues. ICT 20, Technology for Better Human Learning and Teaching. This is about sort of, what defining the frameworks and interoperability requirements for the building blocks of a digital ecosystem for learning, developing integrating tools and systems, adaptive learning, augmented cognition technologies, effective learning, and so on. Lots of things I don't know much about. Game-based learning, virtual environments, virtual worlds, all sorts of really interesting stuff that is going to help people or help develop new learning environments. It's going to make it easier or more stimulating for people to learn. This is not necessarily obviously directed at the cultural sector, but obviously there are lots of education and training programs within many cultural organizations, so for some it could be relevant. Deadline again, 14th of April, and once again you can get an RIA and an IA here, and this is an area where the public procurement of innovative devices might also be relevant. I haven't done a lot of work about the public procurement strand, so that's not an area that I can talk very much about, but the RIAs and the IAs, it's clear there what they're about: research and then testing, or testing. Okay, so let's look at the reflective calls that are going to be relevant in 2015, and there are 7 of these which are listed here, and I'm going to briefly look at each of these in a little bit of detail. So this is the emergence and transmission of European cultural heritage and Europeanization. The deadline is the 28th of May, and it's for an RIA. Okay, there's a lot of background there about what this is all about. The challenge is to explore and show how critical reflection on the historical, cultural, and normative roots of Europe's cultural and democratic practices and institutions contribute to an evolving European identity today. A very interesting research-based project that might be relevant to some people. Reflective 3, this is another RIA. Knowledge is much less significant on the contribution of this vast European policy to a positive identification with the European project as such, or to the emergence of a valued popular sense of European identity. This is quite an interesting one. This shows that there are lots of very positive policies that the European Union has put into place, which are designed to help promote the European Union, promote better understanding of all the good things the European Union is doing, promote good things that the European Union should be doing. And what this is really saying is that in spite of this, the European Union has failed to engage with citizens to persuade them that the European Union is a good thing. I think this particular call is quite interesting. It's a bit of a panic attack on the part of the European Union to say, well, we're trying to do good things. We think we're doing good things, but everybody thinks we're rubbish. So, let's look at the mismatch between what we think we're doing and what people's perceptions are, and explore, what has happened, why it's happened, and how we might perhaps change this in the future. Interesting. Reflective 4, cultural opposition in the former socialist countries. This also 28th of May, and it's an RIA. This is looking at the fact that, there are all sorts of documents and objects in collections about the independent cultural movements against the regimes in the former socialist countries. This is looking at work that might explore these documents and activities in more detail and provide better documentation and better ways in which they might be shared with the population, or more accessible to the population if they were interested in this particular area. Reflective 5, cultural heritage of war in contemporary Europe. This looks at what it says, the ambiguous relation to war since the beginning of this age, looking in particular at what happened after World War II, the ways in which the Nobel Peace Prize came online, the memorial events for the centenary of World War I. In other words, exploring the cultural heritage of war and how that can be reinterpreted in terms of helping provide a positive direction for the future of the European Union and the member states. Innovation ecosystems of digital cultural assets. This is 28th of May deadline as well, and this is an innovation action. So this is purely a research-based project. The objective is to enhance the analysis of cultural resources to improve our understanding of how European identity can be traced, constructed, and debated, and to use those resources to foster innovation across sectors. So this is to look at ways in which we might be more innovative in our approaches to being more aware of and understanding our cultural assets, ways in which we can better understand that through digitalization of such assets, and way in which that could be better shared and used to help augment European identity and help greater understanding across Europe. Number 8, a communication dissemination platform. So this is a CSA, closing date 28th of May. This is just trying to set up mechanisms to better communicate and disseminate the results for a whole range of projects in this particular area. So there's going to be a large number of projects in the area of inclusive, innovative, and reflective societies. So if you feel that you've got a track record in providing interesting ways of disseminating information, then this could be something relevant to you. Number 11, and this is the last one, you'll be pleased to know, enabling innovation, creating impact in social sciences and humanities. This is another CSA. And this is essentially saying that the social sciences and humanities sector has failed to really make much of an impact in sharing the results of all its work. It shares a bit amongst itself, but it doesn't really share much outside of its own networks. So how could this information be better shared, and the results? I mean, people are more aware perhaps of the impact of research in other areas because it has a more direct impact on their daily life, if it's engineering or medicine or whatever it might be. This has not happened to the same degree in the social science and humanities, and how might this happen more in the future? So those are the various strands, okay? And I've realized I haven't gone back to the chat session for a while, so apologies for that. I will just go back and check to see, are these deadlines for the proposal, says Yorgos. Yes, these are deadlines. Those are submission deadlines, Yorgos. So the submission deadlines are the dates in April or in May, the 28th of May. Those are the dates for the submissions of these projects. You'll find more information if you go to the individual web pages for those programs. Okay, I'm going to go back. So let me finally just say a few words about the SME instrument. This is aimed at high growth, highly innovative SMEs who have global ambitions to disrupt established value networks in existing markets. They want to change the world, make it all run differently. Actively investing in innovation, looking to grow, established for a while, not at a startup stage. This is not for startup businesses. This is for creative businesses that have been around for a while. In the UK, that's the SME National Contact Point. If you've got questions about this particular strand, write to him in the first instance. There will be national contact points in the SMEs Innovation strand in all the member states. You can find them via the websites that I'll give you at the end here, but in the UK, it's Steve Bradley you need to talk to. Okay, there are several stages here. Concept and feasibility assessment. All they want is a 10-page proposal. On the basis of your 10-page proposal, you may or may not get 50,000 euros. Okay, there's a 10% success rate. So a low success rate, because obviously, as you can imagine, everybody seeks 50,000 euros by writing a 10-page proposal for their bright idea. The result of your 50,000 is to develop a business plan and to put together your application for the full-scale grant, which is the demonstration market replication R&D grant. I mean, because it may cover any of those particular areas. This is based on the first commercialization plan that you have delivered in the first stage, and you can get a grant from 1 to 2.5 million euros for this. This is only for people, obviously, who get through the first stage, and if you get through the first stage, you have a 50% success rate of getting your grant of 1 to 2.5 million euros. No partners required. In terms of the subsequent stages of commercialization of your project, if you get successfully through the second stage, there is a commercialization stage. They don't give you any more money, but they will provide you with access to mentoring and support in other ways. Okay, I'm not going to say any more about the SME system. You can sort of look at it there. It's relatively straightforward. Obviously, it's very focused on innovative small and medium enterprises that have been around for a while that are trying to change the world. Contacts. Right, the main commission websites are given there. There's the main commission website at the top. The funding guide is given there. The participation portal website, the European Commission help desk is given there, and the partner search website is given there as well. There are various documents that you can access. The participation portal has an online manual, which is the funding guide there. The eligibility and guidelines for all strands are available from that document, and advice on how to apply can be found via that particular document. So masses of information that you might wish to have a look at. Then again, you might not. Contact points. That website at the top provides links to the various national contact points, the NCPs in all the eligible country. There are lots of NCPs. As I explained, there are contact points, NCPs, for all the different strands, and if you have queries, they are the best people to talk to in the first instance. The main UK website for this program is www.h2020uk.org, but there will be websites such as that in each of the member states or eligible countries. And you can go to that website and search for the NCP relevant to the particular strand that you are interested in. So that's it, really. There's nothing more really that I can say about this. It is a complicated, large-scale program, and I think that I don't want to say any more because I just get into levels of detail that would be probably not relevant to people. You can see the various strands and the deadlines that are coming up in this year and in April and May. There will be more deadlines that will be announced this year, more potential deadlines in 2016 and beyond that will be announced this year. Some of those may also be relevant. If you do think you've got a good idea, then my advice is to go and talk to the NCP. Do sign up for our advice. We will be alerting people as new calls for Horizon 2020 come on stream. Look at the different opportunities and so on and so forth. All the usual things. How ready you are, what deadline, have a good idea, find and secure your partners. And those we offer separately. You've seen all that before. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm now going to go back to the website to see if there are any general questions. Obviously this is a complicated program, so don't expect me to be able to give you detail about any of these strands. and we're still waiting for the results of the first call, so I can't even give you some information about that at this point. Okay. Emilia has asked a question: is the money spent for the consulting during the preparation stage claimed as expenses for the project? No, is the short answer to that. I think, I'm sorry, Emilia, I'm not 100% sure I completely understand that question, but if you're saying if before you submit your application you have to spend money traveling to meet members of the consortium or mother partners or whatever, can you claim those costs? The answer is no, you can't. I'm afraid that has to be money that's invested by the partners in the development of the project application. The European Commission generally has this no retroactivity rule. You cannot claim for costs incurred before the official project start date. It's a standard rule that applies across the board. So, if you have to go to 2 or 3 meetings in other countries, then you cannot claim for those. If you're trying to get something happening, it would be a good idea to try and arrange for the meetings to happen in your own country, of course, I suppose. So sorry, but can't help you in that particular one. I'm going to hang on here. We've finished, it's only 1:45. I'm going to hang on here for a few more minutes to see if there are any other questions about this particular program. We're hoping that shortly, there'll be results from the first call, and we'll be able to give you some examples of projects that have been funded, but the first call, the results haven't yet come out, as far as I know, last time I checked, a week or so ago, so we can't give you those at this stage. Are there any other questions then? Okay, if there are no other questions, I am going to go offline. Okay, I think that's it. I think there are no other questions. So thank you very much for participating. I am going to end this webinar. Thanks very much. I will press the stop button in a few seconds. Thank you, and see you again soon.